Welcome back to Kings of the North. We got a weird one, but a fun one. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. We are doing Northern sister schools. And the idea of this, Landis, is you know how like cities have sister cities in foreign countries, and it's like, and I was going to look this up to have actual information. But I recently went to a book talk where an author talked about how don't do any research, just make stuff up. So I didn't do any research on this.
Yeah.
So for instance, I don't know what the sister cities are for Ann Arbor, Michigan, but maybe they're Stuttgart, Germany. I don't know. And I don't know the sister city for Morgantown, West Virginia, but maybe it's Paris. So like how they have sister cities, we're going to have sister schools. And we're going to then go to these cities, these college towns, and ask if they would like to have a cultural exchange. We would like to get these schools paired up in a home and home. And we want to no, we don't. We want to tell the South to cram it. We don't care. It's just a bit. We don't want to be sister cities with these people. But what I want to do is establish what I think are fair, fun, reasonable, interesting comparisons for 13 of our 26 Northern schools. I didn't do all 26 because that show would be too long and it was too hard to figure out. But it's going to be this Northern team, this Northern football team is like this Southern football team. So I picked them. Yeah. I know them. And you're going to try to guess them. Is this fun?
It is fun. I have the list of Ann Arbor sister cities. Would you like them? Or do you want to?
Yeah, no. So people get a vibe. So they get a vibe. Beijing, China. No, I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Also, I feel like you should only have one.
I know.
Ann Arbor has 7 apparently.
Yeah, it's a lot. Of
the newest one is, and I'm going to butcher some of these names. Lubny, Ukraine is the most recent one.
I believe this is that's great.
This is an article from January of 2024. The others are Tübingen, Germany.
Of course. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Belize City, Belize.
Obviously.
Which is an interesting one. Yeah. Hakone, or I think it's how you say Japan. Peterborough, Ontario, which I'd imagine is like 10 minutes around Arbor. Huigalpa, Nicaragua.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And then the last one is Dakar, Senegal.
Yeah, no, that one I've heard of. Yeah. So that's great. So like, they have film festivals in all those sister cities where they watch the 5-year engagement and they talk about that sandwich place in Ann Arbor that everybody loves. And people are just like,
Zingerman's.
Yeah. Zingerman's. Yeah. Right. They have a Zingerman's have you been to the Zingerman's in Belize City, Belize? No?
It's weird. I've never been to Zingerman's, but on multiple occasions I've had Zingerman's food delivered to my house in Columbus.
From Ann Arbor?
Yeah, you can get like a loaf of sourdough and like a cheesecake from Zingerman sent to your house if you want to.
But you've never, because you're usually in and out on your Ann Arbor trips, and
I've only ever spent. I've been to Ann Arbor probably 5 or 6 times at this point, but I've only ever spent the night there. I think once.
Yeah,
like actually in Ann Arbor.
Well, we'll put it on our list of things to do here in Kings of the North.
Yeah.
So this
we had a sister school when I was in high school.
Pen pals? Pen pals?
I went to an all boys Catholic high school, so we had a sister school. So when we had dances and those of us awkward ones that couldn't find a date, there would just be like girls there who might want to dance with you. They usually did it.
Buses of girls for the awkward Catholic school boys.
Yeah, or buses full of awkward Catholic school boys to the girls' school. Yeah.
Like on the other side of the lake, right there. Oh, there's the girls' school. Yeah. So
right. Yeah.
We get it. So this is like that, except not exactly like that. We're not putting awkward people on buses to send them to these schools.
We could.
It's all these Vanderbilt people showed up in Evanston. We're here. Oh, do you want to be our sister school? So it's not that. It's really a football comparison. And for each of these pairings, I really tried to come up with the reason why I picked them. And it might be related to historical success or lack of success. There may be something about their coaches. There may be something about their rosters, about their strategy, about their geography. Are they urban or rural? Whatever. But for most of them, also, I think there is a reasonable comparison about how they might be on the football field this year. And we may use this as a comparison of like, hey, how are you doing, Northern School, compared to your sister school during the course of this season? Because we think it's a fair comparison, because not everybody's competing with Georgia and Alabama and Texas and LSU. So let's get to it. 13 of them, I'm going to give a little description of the pairing, and then Bill's going to try to guess. So it's going to be hard because, like, some of them are going to ask, yeah, it'll be good. And when we did the actual trivia, I destroyed you. So maybe it's good if I think it's easy. Maybe you'll actually, you're like, oh, that's still kind of hard. All right, this is number one. These are two classic blue blood programs. They are both among the top 6 in all-time NCAA college football wins, and they are both coached by first-time head coaches who previously were successful defensive coordinators.
Oh. I don't know. Notre Dame?
Notre Dame is the Northern School.
Okay.
And their Southern sister school is?
I don't know. Defensive coordinator.
Super famous defensive coordinator. The most famous defensive coordinator of the modern era, who's now a head coach.
Georgia?
Oklahoma. Brent Venables.
Oh, Brent Venables. Okay.
So Notre Dame and Oklahoma, traditional blue bloods. Notre Dame is 4th all-time in wins. Oklahoma is 6th. Right now, they, in this era, have been good, but not good enough. They've both made the 4-team playoff multiple times. They have never won a game in the playoff. They have these defensive coordinators who are fairly new head coaches, Venables in year 2, Marcus Freeman in year 3, and they're pretty far removed from their last national title. Oklahoma in 2000, Notre Dame in 1988, which like might seem like it's far apart, but like it's not that far. They're both old. They're both like a generation away. And I think this is a good on-field comparison right now. Notre Dame, we think, is potentially in line to make a playoff run this year. But I don't know if Oklahoma's there, but they better get there soon. Like that's where they were with Lincoln Riley, and Venables only has so long before people are going to be like, okay, whatever. Like I get it. They're getting their feet under them, but this is one of my favorite comparisons. I think there's a lot in common here.
Yeah, there is. I don't think my mind would have went there. Right. I was like thinking about, I did not make my own list, but I was like thinking about some schools, and I actually had a hard time figuring out a sister school for Notre Dame. And I think maybe that was mostly just the Catholic thing. It's like, what's the Catholic SEC school that I could make for Notre Dame? So I really couldn't come up with one. But no, I think from like a pure football standpoint, ignoring the religious part of it, I guess. Yeah. This does make sense to me. And I also like, it feels like they are two like historically very successful programs that, as you mentioned, have not quite lived up to that lately, but also that like the ground is shifting beneath them a little bit in a way that it's like you got to really prove sort of who you are at this point. Like for Oklahoma, obviously, that's like joining the SEC and like trying to maintain that status. And for Notre Dame, it's like, okay, you're going to be on the stage probably more often than not with the expanded playoff. Can you prove to us now that you sort of belong like in the same conversation as the big boys? So it's not quite the same thing. If Notre Dame had joined a conference, it would be nearly identical, I think. But if you can like kind of twist it in that way a little bit, I do feel like both programs, while I think positioned reasonably well, like are still very much in a like, okay, are you still at the table, or are you going to have to go sit at another table kind of thing?
Let's add this to every conversation we have. Who would you rather be right now, Notre Dame or Oklahoma?
I would rather be Notre Dame.
I agree. Notre Dame is still a little bit like in control of its own destiny. Oklahoma is moving to this new conference. When they were talking about it, it was like Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. Now it's Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. And I don't know that we know, and I don't know that Oklahoma knows where they're going to wind up. Yeah. So both good, both not great, both historically great, but what are they right now? And are Freeman and Venables the guys to get them to that next step? And the answer very well might be yes in both cases, but sure, it could be no in both cases. And they both successful head coaches who went to like a bigger program. Lincoln Riley to USC and Brian Kelly to LSU. Both the previous head coaches left because they thought they could. Oh my God, this is a great comparison. Left because they did not think they could get over the top at these two places. They went to places where they believed they could get over the top. That Notre Dame is not LSU and Oklahoma is not USC. These guys should have a meeting. They should have a meeting. They should play each other and they should get together and talk. They should hug. Hey, man.
They should hug.
You're good, but not great. Oh, come on. Bring that in. Good, but not great. Right? Come on.
I also kind of feel like, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not on the ground in either place, but I sense this a little bit from afar, that when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma and when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, the initial reaction, like very reasonably, was like, screw that guy. We don't need him. And then like a year later, it was like, I wish he was still here.
Welcome back to the good, not great, screw that guy filled with regret bowl between Notre Dame and Oklahoma. All right, that's a good one. That's as good as it gets. But that's a good example.
That's really good. Yeah, that is really good.
So that's what I tried to do is like, and I just stumbled it, but like maybe like 3 or 4 things that these schools have in common that maybe they wouldn't have in common with every other school. So again, if you live in South Bend, if you live in Norman, maybe just pick up the phone, call somebody in that area code, find a pen pal, and lament good but not great. Screw that guy. Oh no, he's gone. Number 2. Historic championship teams that both just lost their incredibly successful head coaches.
It's Michigan and Alabama.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I think that this maybe would not have been the comparison that you would have found for Alabama, but I think it's appropriate here because, right, Michigan's the defending national champion. Alabama is the historic modern dynasty, and they both were absolutely shaped around their head coaches.
Yes.
Bama wasn't Bama before Nick Saban, and Michigan was not Michigan before Jim Harbaugh in this modern era. And they both have elite program-defining coaches previously that these guys were trying to live up to. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of the best programs we talk about have a guy like that, but not everybody has a Bear Bryant. Not everybody has a Bo Schembechler, and both those names start with B. So I think this is the correct association here. I would hear arguments for it. And by the way, also all time, Michigan first in wins, Alabama second in wins. So this, if Saban and Harbaugh both hadn't left, I don't know if I would have done this. If one of them had left and the other had stayed, I'm not sure I would have done this. But recent success paired with what they're dealing with now, nobody has more in common on that level than these two programs.
No, they don't. And I would imagine there are some people in Ann Arbor who felt a chill go down their spine when you compared Michigan to Alabama. How dare you compare Michigan to a football factory?
Chill. Oh, like that. But but if you don't want to try to be a football factory, but if you're accidentally a football factory, then that's okay. It's like we would never attempt to be a football factory, but 15-0 and 13 guys in the draft, we'll take it.
Yeah. Also, Michigan, you are a football factory. Just
it's okay. Yeah. They're coming off their greatest season ever. Like that's the thing. They both were at an absolute peak. For everything that Bear Bryant was, this is the greatest run in Alabama history. Nick Saban is the peak. And if we're doing a list of the greatest college football coaches ever, I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge. I haven't dug into that. As a guy said, don't do research. But I mean, it might be Bear Bryant 1 and Nick Saban 2. Actually, I think I've said in the past, I think Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. It might be Nick Saban 1 and Bear Bryant 2. But Alabama, this run for Alabama is its greatest run, the Saban era, and Michigan's coming off its greatest season. They both are really, Bama not at its ultimate peak. Bama's peak may have been 2020, which was arguably the best Saban team, but they were in the playoff. They beat Georgia. It was still a peak among many for Saban last year, and it was the best Michigan season ever, and they both left. And I think Kalen DeBoer and Sharon Moore are reasonable comparisons here. Of course, Kalen DeBoer has been a head coach and Sharon Moore hasn't, but I don't know that we know for sure. There's great potential with both. I don't know that Kalen DeBoer to me is any more of a sure thing than Sharon Moore is. So again, I think it's a pretty similar spot these programs are in with recent success and current questions.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I would also characterize Michigan's recent history like as a run, not merely a season, right? Like I know
Sure.
There were 100 years ago, there were probably stretches where Michigan went 9 seasons without losing a game. I hope we can like kind of remove that from the conversation. Like to beat Ohio State 3 years in a row, to win the Big Ten 3 years in a row, to go to the playoff 3 years in a row, and then to cap it with a national championship. Like that is arguably at least the greatest modern run, I think, in Michigan football history. And it's not as prolonged of a run, obviously, as what Alabama had under Nick Saban. But I think that's okay. It just makes them more alike, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I do think I don't know that I see a whole lot of comparisons between Kalen DeBoer and Sherrod Moore, other than them now trying to keep that ball rolling. But I do think it leaves both programs in similar situations for sure.
Who would you rather be, Alabama or Michigan today?
I would rather be Alabama.
Which is no offense to Michigan. Michigan's there's plenty of schools who would rather be Michigan, but if you have any inkling that DeBoer can keep 70% of the Saban train rolling, it's like, okay, well, you'll take that. Plus they're got a bunch of players down there. But yeah. I don't think Michigan's in a terrible spot at all. All right. Number 3. These are two, what I call like kind of shiny programs right now, both of whom are ascending in this modern world, both of whom have not super, not like yesterday, but not too far away, high level success, but they're not where they want to be or where they think they're gonna be. And I think the way the world has changed is probably in favor for both of them. And by the way, both of them are playing in new conferences this season.
Oregon and Texas?
That is correct.
Okay.
So you think about the Mac Brown run at Texas, right? A national championship in 2005. They got back there in 2009. I mean, like they were very competitive, but obviously they fell off at the end of the Mac Brown era, and then they scuttled around for a while with Charlie Strong and Tom Herman. You think about the Chip Kelly era at Oregon and the way they elevated, and then, you know, like they were absolutely in the mix, never won a national championship, but were right there a couple times. Mark Helfrich got them to a national championship game in 2014 in this playoff era. And then, like, you know, didn't scuttle around, but they lost. You know, Willie Taggart was only there a year, and both Willie Taggart and Mario Cristobal left for other jobs. And now they have Dan Lanning. And I think both where Oregon is with Dan Lanning, where Texas is with Steve Sarkisian, I think they're both super excited about that. In an NIL high pro, you know, I think is shiny. I'm shining.
Yeah.
Is shiny an okay word for both these programs? And that's not a negative, but like, I think they both got a little juice right now that extends beyond on-field success.
No, I think shiny's right. They definitely have juice. I think like maybe if you were to survey 100 college football fans and ask them like, if a changing of the guard at the top of the sport was ever going to happen, not that it will, but if it did, who do you think it would be? And I think these are the two programs they would say.
Not there yet, but boy, oh boy, does it feel like they're gonna be there soon.
They're on their way there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that, like, they fit that description. Not quite there. Almost unanimous belief they will get there. I think there's two teams in the country that fit that bill.
Yeah. It's these two. Yeah.
Okay. The recent success, last 10 years, I did a decent chunk of research of. It's such just a nice window, the 10-year window of the 4-team college football playoff era. Oregon was substantially more successful. They're 90-38, and Texas is 73-53. So like Texas was mucking around for a much greater period of time. So Oregon has clearly been more successful and never bottomed out the way Texas did for a while there. But it's more the ascension and the hope for the future that I think they have in common here.
Yeah, I think, and it does. If like, Oregon dipped a little bit with like after Helfrich got them to the national title game in 2014, right? There was a little bit of a lull there, and then they had 3 coaches in 3 years. So like there was they didn't bottom out the way that Texas did, but there was a little bit of a where is this going, I think, kind of vibe around Oregon, and clearly they got that figured out. And I've like, for all of the memes and jokes that I've been written and said about Texas being back over the last 15 years, like I don't know, kind of feels like they got to figure it out now, right? So with Sark there and the alignment behind him and the investment in that program, so I think these two are very much alike in where they're positioned currently and where they hope to be, and how they are built, I think, to get there too.
Do you disagree with any of the three so far that you thought there could be a better match with anybody? Oregon, Texas, Michigan, Alabama, and Notre Dame, Oklahoma.
I do not. No, I think those are all solid. Yeah.
You might disagree with this one.
Okay.
This one's a little more difficult. There's a part here that doesn't match straight on, but I will tell you, in the 10 years of the 4-team playoff era, one of these teams is 73-50 and the other team is 72-50. Oh. They both, in recent times, very recent times, have really leaned on the transfer portal to reshape their roster. And in at least fairly recent times, they have both lost their head coaches for, shall we call it, off-field indiscretions related to technology. Who do you think these two teams are?
Michigan State and Ole Miss.
That is correct. So I started because I was just looking. Chris Stassen is a guy who just has a great list. You can look it up at stassen.com of like it's all kind of sortable records and that kind of thing. So I just put in, compare all the teams in major college football the last 10 years. And I noticed that Ole Miss and Michigan State were right next to each other. I was like, let's start there. And then I was like, what's going on? What's going on with those two guys? Mel Tucker. And is there any Hugh Freeze? So again, like both of those, it's like, hey guys, is anyone here? Raise your hand if you've lost a head coach because of his, let's call it, off-field indiscretions. Anyone? I see Ole Miss raising, and Michigan State. Why don't you come up and talk about that? Again, I don't have a list. I probably should. I'm sure there are other shows that have a list that are like, oh, do you want to talk about coaches who were goofing around and got
coffee table book?
Yeah. My coach. So the difference here, and then the transfer thing, Ole Miss is doing it right now. Mm-hmm. And Mel Tucker did it in year 2 in 2021 when they got Kenneth Walker III and then went to a New Year's Six Bowl with a whole bunch of transfers and had like immediate success. So like right now, who's a better football team? But like recent history, I think there's a decent amount here.
No, yeah, better football team. Clearly the answer is Ole Miss. But I think sort of like generally methods of remaining competitive are very similar between these two, right? Because like your Michigan State is situated like well enough in the Midwest and in Michigan that like you get a decent high school crop, and same obviously for Ole Miss down in Mississippi, but probably never quite enough that you have to be very aggressive in the transfer portal. But I also think that probably leaves you susceptible to a lot of ebbs and flows with your program too, right? So like I can see both these programs like, I don't know, Ole Miss makes the playoff this year and makes a nice run and maybe competes for an SEC title. And then like next year, they don't quite hit it right with their transfer class and they go 7-5. Like, and I can see Michigan State having a very similar existence. That's kind of what I thought they were going to be under Mel Tucker. Then obviously that fell apart. And as much as I like Jonathan Smith, I think that's probably what they're going to be too. Just like a lot of peaks and valleys there. Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's sort of the reality of your situation. And also like having an ability to peak, I think is pretty good. So not every program really has that in a way that I think these two do. So this is good. This is another one that I do not think is obvious and not one that I would have come up with myself. But I do think does make a lot of sense.
There was a different team that I compared Ole Miss to initially that was really more of a right now this year football comparison, but I found a different team for that team, and I like this one because of the indiscretions. All right, this might be the most difficult one. This might be the biggest stretch, but you know the whole world's not Michigan, Alabama. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this comparison is two two programs in very major cities, which makes them different than a lot of other programs. In the last 10 years, one of them is 59 and 65, and the other is 56 and 66. So both are slightly under 500 in the last decade. And both recently acquired head coaches that I think both fan bases feel like this guy gets us, gets this program. We hope we can keep this guy for a while, because maybe we haven't always been a place where we have a head coach that feels very connected to the program and the city. But our hope is that we do have that now, and we want to keep them long term. And I also will say both of these programs had very high peaks in the 80s or 90s that were kind of short. So they're under 500 in the last 10 years, but they both at least have had a moment in my lifetime.
And the northern school is Boston College, but I don't know who the southern school is.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's difficult. What's a big city in the South? What's the biggest city in the South?
The biggest, Georgia Tech.
It's Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Boston College and Georgia Tech. Year one of Bill O'Brien at Boston College, who is a Boston native, did not go to BC, but we've talked about this a lot. There are things that led Bill O'Brien to Boston College, and maybe he's a guy that gets it. And Brent Pry went to Georgia Tech, played at Georgia Tech, and
Brent Key.
I get them. I worked on it for 45 minutes. I live in the North. You have too many Brents. Can we have a showdown between Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech? Two Techs with Brents, Brent Tech. For real, South? Brent Tech? Brent Key is at Georgia Tech. Brent Pry is at Virginia Tech. Yes. They are not successful enough for me to differentiate between them.
That's fair. Yeah.
We might do a feature this season called How'd Brent Tech Do This Week? I can't be the only person in the North who's doing that, right?
No, I don't think so.
Brent Key.
Yeah. Brent Key he went to Georgia Tech. He's actually from the South. Brent Pry is from Altoona, Pennsylvania, but talks with a Southern accent now that he's at Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Little Brian Kelly. He was the Penn State guy.
Yeah.
Brent Key. So that's the comparison of, and they're both in the ACC, like not a lot, but Georgia Tech shared a national title in 91, right? And Boston College won a Heisman in 1984. So we've seen that it can happen. Georgia Tech and Boston College can matter on the national landscape. I'm not sure that that's what Georgia Tech and Boston College are hoping for now with their current head coaches, but I think there is hope there around a guy who gets us. We hope we can keep, and maybe they can actually build something here.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like this one too. And also, like Georgia Tech is not a Catholic school, but something about it feels like a Catholic school. I don't know, like the look of Georgia Tech. Like that's a Catholic school logo and color scheme if I ever saw one. So I think they go together that way. No, I think there's something very much to like not just anybody can come here and be successful, right? It takes a very specific person and someone who cares a lot about these programs. And like obviously Bill O'Brien didn't go to Boston College, but he is from there. And like I was skeptical of like how much that job would actually mean to him, but it just felt to me like maybe that was a job of convenience more than anything else, but it actually does seem like he's rather passionate about Boston College and Boston in general, Boston College specifically, which I do think does make this similar to Brent Key at Georgia Tech. And also it's like two programs that don't typically have a whole lot going for them, like fighting an uphill battle, like just to kind of get noticed where they are too, right? Like in Boston and Atlanta. So,
yeah, I think I forgot to ask these questions the last couple. Would you rather be Oregon or Texas right now?
Texas.
Would you rather be Michigan State or Ole Miss right now?
Ole Miss.
Would you rather be Boston College or Georgia Tech right now?
Boston College.
Okay. I might rather be Oregon. but I think it's close. Do you think Texas, Oregon's close?
I think it's close because like the Phil Knight money makes it close, but it's hard to pass up an opportunity to be in Texas with everything that's around you, right?
Yeah. Okay, you're not disputing this. You're not disputing.
No. I like all these so far. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of like this exercise.
Yeah.
You know who you remind me of? Let me tell you why you're like this person. All right, this is another one. I originally thought about this northern team with a different southern team, and then I switched. It's a slight stretch, but I'm not against it.
Okay.
Two major powers, both I think in the good, not great category. Both had absolutely elite runs at the top of the sport. One of those runs was 20 years ago, and one of those runs was 40 years ago. And the point to me is, I think to like the younger generation, they don't care whether it's 20 years ago or 40 years ago. That's not where those programs are now. They are not at the top of the sport right now, but they once were. And they are good. They are very good, but I'm not sure. I don't think either fan base is satisfied. And both fan bases want to see more. The last 10 years, one of them has 88 wins and one of them has 79 wins, 88 and 39, 79 and 45. So they're both good, but they both want more. And the final thing that may give it away is the head coach at one was once rumored to maybe leave to be the head coach at the other.
Oh. I was going to say Penn State and Florida State, but is that not right?
It is Penn State, but it's not Florida State. And we can discuss whether you think there's a better comparison for Penn State.
Penn State and Miami?
There was once upon it is not Miami. Once upon a time, people were like, I think James Franklin might leave for this job. And like, maybe it'll work out for everybody.
USC?
Okay. Would this be one that you would want to dispute? Because I don't think this is a perfect fit. If you want to make a case that, Doug, you should have gone Florida State, you should have gone Miami, maybe those schools will pop up with another Northern comparison later. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have gone Penn State, LSU. I at one point, I originally had Penn State, Ole Miss, because I think that's a decent comparison. Like, both have been sort of like the fourth best team in their conference, who the 12-team playoff opens up an opportunity for them. And they just played in the bowl game, right? So Penn State and Ole Miss got associated that way. But then like really over time, Penn State's a level above Ole Miss, like historically for sure. And even recent history. So that's why I didn't go there. LSU, Florida State, Miami, USC, we're looking for that good bit, but not great tier in the South for a Penn State comparison. Which one would you have gone with? Because you got to have Penn State in here, because there's certainly somebody for them. Is there a better Penn State comparison than USC?
I would probably at this point would probably prefer like a Florida State, maybe. There was a time, and it probably doesn't make sense now, but I think there are a lot of similarities between like Penn State and Auburn. But Auburn, has fallen off, I think, a little bit, and I don't know. Maybe they'll get back to being like a top 5 team in the SEC, but they're not that right now. But I don't know. I think Florida State, not so much Florida, probably not even Miami too, because I don't think like the outsized expectations that exist at Miami quite exist at a place like Penn State. But I feel like Penn State and Florida State, like at least this version of Florida State with Mike Norvell, it's like I think they're like kind of always going to be there, right? They're always going to be hanging around. But kind of on the periphery, and I think making you think that they're going to be capable, like within a certain window of like actually making a run for it. Clearly, I think that was Florida State last year before it lost its quarterback, and maybe that's Penn State this year. I don't know, and I don't know that I view USC quite in the same light at the moment. So I would have probably gone Florida State here rather than USC.
You think Penn State's ahead of USC right now?
I do, yeah.
The thing that, and listen, if we're going to go like Joe Paterno, Bobby Bowden, that's a better comparison than Joe Paterno, Pete Carroll. But you think about where, Penn State won 2 titles in a very short period of time in 82 and 86. USC won back-to-back titles in 03, 04. And again, to me, like sort of my point is like That's 20 years apart, but they're both ancient history. They are.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush are kind of ancient history. Not quite as ancient as Todd Blackledge and Kurt Warner, the first Kurt Warner, but it's not that dissimilar. So I will accept this argument. As I said, there may be another school that pops up down the road, and we can see if maybe you would have switched these teams as like, okay, we can move these pieces around a little bit. So, all right, let's do one more before the break. And this again is, okay. This is two schools that both have changed conferences recently. They both are in cities. They both reached heights under former Ohio State assistants, and they both are not at that place right now. But they both have been very good in the playoff era at a lower level, and now they've stepped up to a higher level. And the question is, can they maintain some semblance of success with that leap?
Cincinnati.
Yep.
Former Ohio State assistants.
Both the assistants were part of Ohio State's 2014 national championship team. 3, 2, Houston.
Tom
Herman.
Right.
So Luke Fickell went from Ohio State to Cincinnati and stayed and built Cincinnati into a playoff team. Tom Herman went from Ohio State to Houston, went 13-1 with Houston in a year, and boogied for the Texas job. And Houston also had success with Kevin Sumlin. Like, that's not the only time they've had success, but also both these schools are currently coached by head coaches who kind of made at best a lateral move to take these jobs. Dana Holgorsen going from West Virginia to Houston, and Scott Satterfield going from Louisville to Cincinnati. And
Dana Holgerson's not at Houston anymore. He got the X.
Right.
Yeah, Willie Fritz is there now.
Sorry. Scott Satterfield, watch out, because it didn't work out for Dana Holgorsen down in Houston. They were similar, but they both did not have successful years. Now clearly, Cincinnati's success is higher and more recent than Houston's success. But I think like Cincinnati showed you at a group of 5 level, it absolutely can be done. Houston also did that. Houston was almost like the blueprint for Cincinnati, because Houston was that school. Houston beat Oklahoma that one year. Houston was like, it's like, hey, could Houston make the playoff? That was sort of the first school in the group of 5 level that really had a hardcore conversation. UCF was in there too, but there was a Houston playoff conversation at one point. They didn't get there. Cincinnati then made it more than a conversation. They made it a reality. They are now both in the Big 12, and now we've got to figure out whether these schools can hang in the Big 12. So what do you think of this comparison?
I think there are similarities between the two in the sense of like, if you can really find somebody there that can like harness the power of just like harness the power of Houston, harness the power of being in Cincinnati. And I think when Tom Herman was there, he did that. And when Luke Fickell was there, they both clearly did that. But I do also think it takes like a specific person to do that. And like Cincinnati, I believe that has not found that. And Houston clearly didn't find it in Dana Holgorsen either. So I do think that the coach very much matters for both of these places, but also too, like Houston, there's a lot of money behind Houston. The Fertitta family, like there are some deep pockets that are invested in the success of Houston athletics. That I unless the Kelseys want to start shoveling out some money, I don't know that dynamic quite exists at Cincinnati. So I think it's more difficult. And also Houston is a much more fertile recruiting ground than Cincinnati is, even if Cincinnati is quite good and the Midwest is still good. Texas and Houston are better. So Similar enough that I'm okay with this, but I do think that the dynamics at Houston provide, I think, much more reliable kind of upward mobility maybe than the dynamics at Cincinnati do.
Cincinnati 3-9 last year, Houston 4-8 last year. Again, taking their lumps in that version of the Big 12. I don't know that there's a better comparison for Cincinnati, right? It just might be, like you're trying, because it's, I don't know.
No, I don't. I mean, I think if you wanted to pick one, I think you'd pick either Houston or you'd pick like SMU. But Houston's probably better.
SMU's not bad though. SMU's not bad. Yeah. Okay. That's the first 7. We're going to take a quick break and come back with another 6 and then a twisted bonus. It's our Sister Schools show here on Kings of the North. Back on the Sister Schools show here on Kings of the North, pairing up a Northern school with a Southern school. Let's get to the next one. Bill, can you guess this? It's the 2 monsters, a North monster and a South monster.
Ohio State and Georgia.
Is there any part of you that thought Ohio State should be with Alabama? Or is this the correct comparison for Ohio State right now?
I mean, I think if Saban was still there, then you could make that comparison. I think either one would have worked, but now I think it's definitely Georgia. I wouldn't go Alabama now.
So, it's not as quite as interesting as a lot of the other ones we've done. These are the 2 schools that recruit the best in their areas of the country. They did play a head-to-head game. We have talked a lot about Kirby Smart perhaps being sort of clearing the way on the head coaching path for Ryan Day. Kirby Smart won his first national title in his 6th year as a head coach. Ryan Day is entering his 6th year as a head coach. Those first 5 years, you might be saying, they're good, but I don't know. Are they going to get over the top? There's a lot of differences, but I think it's like right now on the field. And then the other thing is like historically, it's like Ohio State's been here and Georgia was an underachieving program for like 30 years.
Oh, that's a fair argument too. Yeah.
Ohio State's history is certainly better than Georgia's. There might be some things in the 80s and 90s where like neither of these teams was winning national titles, and you say, okay, well, I don't know, maybe they should have been with the talent they had. Ohio State was closer than Georgia was for a while. To me, it's mostly about the now and the idea that most people think going into the 2024 season, Ohio State and Georgia are the 2 best teams and will be the top 2 teams in the preseason polls. But there might be some other stuff you could pull at.
Yeah, I think this is right. Would you consider Ohio State, Texas, Austin, Columbus, massive athletic departments, resources? Texas's history, I think, probably being a little better than Georgia's, but not quite the same as Ohio State's.
Yeah, I mean, I do think in number of sports they support. When Ohio State and Texas played the series with each other in 05 and 06, that was right when I started covering Ohio State and started covering college sports. Like I did a gigantic series about that, of all the similarities of being the flagship program in a football mad state, right? But I actually, this may actually be something in favor of Ohio State, Georgia. In Texas is the flagship, but there are A&M fans, right? There are Baylor fans, there are TCU fans, there are Houston fans, there are Texas Tech fans. One of the things that has helped Ohio State is that they are so clearly the number 1 team in the state of Ohio. Yes, there's Cincinnati. Yes, there's MAC schools. Georgia is clearly the number 1. Like Georgia Tech, I think is certainly more similar to Cincinnati than it is to Texas A&M as a second school in the state, or than it is to Michigan State as a second school in the state. And so I think the idea maybe of like in your state, kind of everybody roots for you, even if they didn't go there, even if they might like another school. I don't know enough about the South to know if there are Georgia Tech people who occasionally put on the Dogs hat and are like, hey man, I like the Yellow Jackets, but I'll say go Dogs. That's my Yellow Jackets fan who roots for Georgia. This is my go Dogs. That's my Georgia fan who roots for Georgia. They're different. I don't know if they exist, and I don't care to know if they exist. But Texas is bigger, but it also might be more divided, where the states of Ohio and Georgia might be more focused on these two single teams.
I think that's probably right. I do wonder about like SEC fandom in the state of Georgia. Like, if you called around the state and asked who's your favorite football team, you might would you get like 30% Alabama? Like, I don't know. I think like that would not happen in Ohio. Like, right? Who's your favorite football team? It's Ohio State. You might get a little bit of Michigan, but you're not getting 30% Michigan.
No. And you might get some bandwagon, like, I liked Alabama. Like, Georgia wasn't winning, so then I liked Alabama when Saban got there, and now I like Kirby, so I like Georgia.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to find a person who's like, I like Ohio State, but then Michigan beat them 3 times, so now I like Michigan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
I would like to talk to that person. I think
we couldn't show their face, I don't think.
Right. I think there's multiple options for Ohio State. I think this is the best one at the moment.
I think you're right. Like, it's like station in the sport, of course. It absolutely is. It just, I guess it depends on what you'd like to prioritize when making the comparison. But if that criteria is kings of the sport, then it seems to. Yeah.
Okay, who would you rather be, Ohio State or Georgia?
Ohio State.
Interesting. I think it's close to a toss-up, which is a credit to Ohio State that it's that close. I think I maybe would pick Ohio State too, but it's really close. All right, next one. They're both purple, and they both recently lost national championship games.
Washington and TCU?
And I think there's more than that, because these are both very good football programs that reached an absolute peak, that absolutely maximized their opportunities. Right? I mean, we have no doubts about that.
Yeah.
Congratulations on what seasons these teams gave their fan bases the last 2 years. And Washington's had a history of success going back to Don James and then the Chris Peterson era. They're not fly by night. They've been in the playoff before. TCU has a history of success. They should have made the first playoff in 2014. They certainly think they should have. They've competed at the top of the sport. Like, absolutely. These were peaks, but they were not out of nowhere. These are two really good football programs. But after those peaks and the way the sport is right now, I think these are sort of two programs that you would wonder, okay, I don't exactly know where they fit, how they're going to do. Can they continue this success? Are these the type of teams that would be like right at the level of getting shafted in all this stuff? They're really good, but they're not Texas. They're probably not Oregon when it comes to resources and these kind of things. And just being really good football programs that maximize their potential, is that enough in the new world? And so, I think you could, when you look at the future of these two programs, that's part of it. It's not just the purple. That's part of it to me too, that you would say, I hope they're okay, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I would say that TCU is probably better positioned, within that idea than Washington is, only because it's in Fort Worth, it's in the Big 12, and Washington is.
But let me ask you: wouldn't you rather be in wouldn't you rather be in one of the two big conferences? Seattle. They're both in big cities. Fort Worth and Seattle, they're both in big cities. Wouldn't you rather be Washington? Say, well, at least we're in the Big 10. Whereas TCU, we don't even know what the future of the Big 12 is.
Yeah. I think,
or not.
I think I would.
I mean, it's one of those things. Would you rather where Washington is the blank program in the Big 10? I don't know what. In terms of resources, history, fan base, potential, I don't know. 8th, 6th, 9th, I don't know. What's TCU in this version of the Big 12? I mean, I don't. It's there for the taking. Like if TCU gets his stuff, nobody else in the Big 12 just played the national championship game. I think TCU, the best of TCU, could make a case to be the best program in the Big 12, maybe. But would you rather be higher up in the Big 12 or in the middle of the pack in the Big 10 in the modern world? I don't know. But both feels like they're in a little bit of flux.
A little bit of flux, yeah. I think you'd probably already rather be in the boat is not going to sink, which is Washington, like where Washington is, even if you don't love your standing on said boat. But I also don't when you talk about the eventuality of like the two big conferences just kind of absorbing what they think they should take from the rest of the sport. Like I feel like TCU would probably be okay, right? Like TCU football is going to like fall by the. I don't know. It just seems like to me they would be like in the SEC if that happened. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that's a program that the SEC would like scoop up if they had to.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the fundamentals of the university, and I think it also wasn't that long ago that TCU was in the Mountain West. I mean, Washington's like a hardy founding member of the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, Big 10. So, who would you rather be, Washington or TCU right now?
I'd rather be Washington.
Yeah, I think I would rather be Washington too. But I don't. I would rather be Washington. If you said which of these two teams next makes the playoff, I might pick TCU.
I think I would too.
But that gets us to the crux of every college football discussion right now, which is on-field success versus foundational things that make you valuable as a TV property. And that's not the same thing. So I think Washington is probably more foundational and valuable, and TCU might be, because it's in not fighting with Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC in a conference, might be more prepared to be like, oh, they jumped up and won the Big 12 in 2026 and made the playoff. Yeah. But also, lovely purples.
Purple underutilized.
I love purple.
Yeah.
I mean, my
high school was purple.
It's a beautiful color.
Yeah, we were purple and gold. It was great.
All right. Next one is not as reliant on color. There's more fundamental things here. Northern sizzle, Southern sizzle. Lack of substance. Both capitalizing on a new thing in this modern era. One, trying to build its program on the portal. Will it be a success? The other, trying to build its program on NIL. Will it be a success? But this is about hype and not the results at the moment.
Colorado.
Yep.
And
Colorado Miami? And the transfer portal. Miami is an excellent possible comparison here. It's not where I went. When you think of like NIL failure, who do you think of?
Florida?
Not in terms of getting sued, but in
okay.
Who was the number one team in terms of like NIL outlay? Boom.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Yeah. Okay.
So sizzle failure, right? Sizzle lack of results. And that the new world, the new rules or the new lack of rules created opportunities that sort of both these programs have jumped in on. And it's like, well, what has it gotten you so far? Hype, excitement, outsized expectations that are unmet. Miami is an excellent possibility here. Florida is an excellent possibility here. But I was looking for something to like who's been super sizzly in the South. And I think like they bought the best recruiting class in the country and it led to their head coach getting fired.
Right.
So and they're like, oh well. So I did like this one. Would you have liked Miami or Florida better for a Colorado comparison?
No, this makes more sense. I think you're right. This A&M has been the sizzliest with the least results, I think. And also like Miami seems like it's like an actually like serious contender perhaps this year. Like we should actually be talking about them in a meaningful way. Whereas Texas A&M I think has mostly just kind of been a punchline, similar to what I think at times unfairly what Colorado has been for just 1 year with Deion Sanders, because they were unquestionably better than they were before he got there.
Absolutely.
But I do think, mostly sizzle with both these programs. So I think that's right.
Yeah. So Texas A&M is kind of like already fully dealt with the failures of their attempts.
Mm-hmm.
They fired Jimbo. They hired Mike Elko. Maybe they'll get their feet back under them. They're further along the path. Colorado is not at the it didn't work stage. They might be a year from now. Might be sure. They tried to build an entire roster out of the portal. It did not work at all. And now Deion's not there anymore. That certainly is on the table. But maybe Colorado will turn this into substance. But it's there. Are these the two? If we had New World sizzle rankings.
Oh,
and New World. I mean, how long have we been in this world of NIL transfers all over the place? 2.5 years, not very long. So what this world hath wrought, sizzle rankings. Are these the top two?
I think these are definitely the top two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who'd you rather be right now, Colorado or Texas A&M?
Pass. No. Probably A&M, I think.
Fair. I'd rather be Colorado this season, if they can rebuild the offensive line and brought an interesting defensive coordinator, and they have a lot of good skill guys, and certainly Shadur Sanders is a better quarterback than whoever Texas A&M is. Connor Wegman still at Texas A&M? So I'd rather be Colorado this year, but I think just the inherent pieces, the foundational parts of the program, it's in Texas. What are we talking about? Why is Texas A&M incapable of doing this? It's insane.
At least at A&M, there'll always be money to throw at the problem.
Yeah.
Might have to solve it, but the money will still be there.
Yeah. Okay. This is one that I absolutely stumbled into because I wasn't thinking this way at all. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. In the last 10 years, one of these teams is 88-40. And the other team is 89-41. Incredibly successful. Borderline 2 of the 10 best Power 4 teams of the last decade, arguably right at that edge of top 10, top 12, top 14. Both schools are coached by coaches who have been there forever. And both of those head coaches have had nepotism problems.
I knew Iowa was the northern school. The southern school, nepotism problems.
They are the 2 longest tenured head coaches in major college football. Iowa's Kirk Ferentz is first, and this school's guy is second. And I had never thought of him this way, but he's Southern Ferentz by our definition of what the South is. Not everybody's definition of the South. I also, here's my final clue.
Okay.
He's a man.
He's a man. He's 40. Oklahoma State.
Mike Gundy, who had his son playing quarterback for a while.
Yeah.
Gunner and Brian, Nepo babies. Really good. And both in the 14 playoff era, right there to make a playoff. Iowa played Michigan State in the 2015 Big Ten title game for a playoff spot. Oklahoma State was right there. What was it, 3 years ago in the Big 12 championship game with Baylor? They would have gotten in if they'd won that game. Right there, right? And better than you think. So they are 16th and 17th in overall win percentage in the past 10 years, but that includes some non-Power 5 teams. So 1, 2, 3. So they are 13th and 14th in Power 5 winning percentage in the last decade. That's awesome. These are great football programs. And Ferentz has been there, whatever it's I think it's his 26th year, and I think this is Gundy's 21st. Mm-hmm. Kyle Whittingham's third. By far the 2 longest tenured guys who have absolutely built the program in their own images to the point that they employ and play their family members. So, and simultaneously, I think both don't get the respect they deserve for the consistent winning that they do, but also both at times have absolutely deserved mockery for the way they go about their business. And I had not thought of Mike Gundy as Southern Ferentz, but put a mullet on Kirk Ferentz and tell me there's a difference.
I would love to put a mullet on Kirk Ferentz. That'd be great. I think it'd be an awesome look for him. He's got a good head of hair, by the way, for a guy who's been around as long as he has. No, this is really good. Two of like the highest floor programs, right, in college football, which is like, and I don't know, maybe that is inherent to the program. To me, that feels a little more about the coaches they've had there. I don't, maybe if we have been there as long as both those guys have, maybe they're the same thing, but just like steady, right? Steady with the ability to peak in a way that's like, is this team going to win the conference? Like, maybe not Iowa because of the existence of Ohio State, but certainly with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was there last year. Didn't they go to the Big 12 championship game last year too?
They're always there.
They're kind of like, oh, it's like, who's in the Big 12 championship? Oh, it's Oklahoma State again. It's like, so remarkably consistent, and probably, both coaches have done things, I think, to sort of like undermine themselves in a way that ends with them not getting the credit that they deserve, I think, generally, but both still very good. Yeah.
And both have had news conference issues.
They have.
I'm a man, I'm 40.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not that guy.
Yeah. It's very similar. People routinely quote Kirk Ferentz saying, "I'm glad I'm not that guy."
Maybe it's
just, or is it I'm glad I'm not that guy, or like it could be worse, I could be that guy.
I could be worse, I could be that guy. Which again, merch is coming. Merch is coming. That's one of my favorite ones.
That's
like,
really
there's
good.
a couple that, like, when I started pulling the thread, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Would you rather be Oklahoma State or Iowa?
Ooh. I don't know. Maybe Oklahoma State with that T. Boone Pickens money. I think I'd rather be Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Okay. This one is certainly more of a stretch, and really it is two defining things. One is that in recent times, both of these programs have leaned on a transfer quarterback from a huge program that they hope would or will change their fortunes. And the other is that they both have a S at the start of their name and a K in the middle.
Syracuse and South Carolina.
Yeah. Is that all right? It's like, I was trying to think, like, if you made Syracuse like Sarah and then you capitalize the C, it's South Carolina and Syracuse. Spencer Rattler and Kyle McCord, I think that comparison is apt. Those are like the two best. Oklahoma and Ohio State are the two best quarterback programs in the country in this era. And Spencer Rattler and Kyle McCord are the exceptions to the rule of it doesn't always work out at those schools.
Yeah.
Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, it'll be fine. No, it's not. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, it'll be fine. Spencer Rattler, no, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And then here are these two programs, South Carolina and Syracuse, who would never get quarterback recruits of this level, who are like, come, we will catch you. Come to us. Oh, this is perfect. It's like a great example of the transfer world. And I think it worked. Did it work for South Carolina with Spencer Rattler? Like, they ruined Clemson's season the one year because they had Spencer Rattler. Like, it didn't get them over the top of anything. And it didn't turbocharge South Carolina, but it was nice. And so now he's gone. He did get drafted. And I'm curious, but he had 2 years, and Kyle McCord's only going to have one at Syracuse. But I don't know if Kyle McCord is to Syracuse as Spencer Rattler was to South Carolina. Is that a win for Syracuse, or do they want more?
I think it's probably the thing that was interesting to me about Spencer Rattler was, like, he was just kind of the same quarterback all along. But when you're that quarterback at South Carolina, it's like, oh, look at this guy. This guy's going to get drafted. Yeah. And then, like, I feel like the same thing's going to happen to Kyle McCord. Right, he can be the exact same quarterback he was at Ohio State, and people in Syracuse like, can you believe this guy? He's awesome. He's going to be a 4th round draft pick. So,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. And if Ohio State's quarterback's a 4th round draft pick, the world's ending. So, like, it's I think those dynamics are very
change
similar.
Change the context. Yeah,
change the context. Yeah, right. So this is, I think, I don't know. I think there are a lot of people that would tell you that like Shane Beamer at South Carolina like has not worked, and like he might be on thin ice there. But I also think that that's partly a reflection of like Southern impatience as well. So I don't think Fran Brown might find himself in a similar situation if it, like they're not hitting the ground running here in this first couple of years. But I do like the quarterback comparison between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, I don't think Fran Brown's walking around putting up Post-it notes in the football offices at Syracuse saying, let's be like the Gamecocks. That's the goal.
Yeah.
The Northern South Carolina. But the strategy, and I just kind of like the SC thing. Okay.
Yeah, I do like that.
Any better? Like, is there like, would there be somebody like I was trying to, we've talked a lot about Syracuse. I think justifiably so, because we think there's a lot of energy around that program and a lot of opportunity this year. I didn't find a better one. I don't know, like, would there be, I don't know, Louisville,
North Carolina,
maybe, or North? Like, I didn't.
That's like a basketball thing, though. Yeah,
I couldn't. Yeah, that's an interesting thing of like, hey, like you're really good at basketball. Can you also be good at football again? Like that's you. I could have spun that. Like, there's a Carolina in there.
Yeah.
All right, we got one left and a bonus. I don't know what you'll think of this one. I don't know what I think of this one. It's inexact. Part of it is that these two schools have an absolute national history with each other and a national rivalry 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Okay. They were absolutely at the top of the sport at one time, and they have not been at the top of the sport, and they are trying to get it back. Blue bloods, by some definitions, certainly have not mattered as much in recent times. They're not exactly on this same track at the same time. One is certainly ahead of the other, but man, I wouldn't be surprised if the other school is like pointing at that school and saying, if they can do it, we can do it. So it's inexact. And again, there are some moving parts here where maybe you could say, I see this, but I think there would be a better fit somewhere else. But the Northern school is certainly one that we've talked a lot about in terms of being fired up to see what's next for this program.
Oh, man. I don't know.
And the Southern school is a school that you mentioned previously, and I said we'd maybe come back around to this school.
So Florida State?
It's Florida State. So who's left in the North that maybe I would try to compare Florida State to, that once upon a time was a national power and played Florida State in huge games?
Why am I?
Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska.
So you think about the Nebraska-Florida State Orange Bowl history, back-to-back years in the 93 and 94 Orange Bowls. So, I mean, like Florida State's coming off a undefeated regular season. Nebraska's coming off a 5-7 regular season, but maybe Matt Rule is putting up Florida State Post-its around the Nebraska offices. I'm like, they got it back.
Yeah.
So if you like, I didn't want to do Nebraska USC, right? So I did Penn State USC. And Nebraska also has a history with Miami. I didn't like there's some stuff here. Penn State and Nebraska are very similar to each other, obviously, in terms of they once upon a time were monsters. Can they get that back? They're not in urban settings. Where are their recruiting bases exactly? We could do a whole show comparing Nebraska and Penn State. And then you think about the programs that they were competing with in the 80s and 90s. So there's some moving around of the pieces that you could do with Miami and Florida State and USC to try to maybe pair them up here. But I landed on Penn State, USC, and Nebraska, Florida State. Yeah,
I think they all do kind of feel similar to me. I might go Nebraska, Miami, because I think maybe like the appetite to get back is perhaps the greatest at those two programs, maybe like even like nationally. I think also they've been kind of like dormant as long as like that's kind of the same, because like Florida State has had dormant periods certainly, but like they also won a national title in 2013.
Right.
So maybe have been more nationally relevant more recently than Nebraska has. So I think this makes sense. I might go more in Miami in this direction for Nebraska than Florida State.
Would you go Penn State, Florida State, and Nebraska, Miami?
I think so. I think that would be my pairs. Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. But I think, again, it's interesting, I think, to have conversations around all these programs of what you once were. Is that a bygone era, or is it something that you can reclaim? And certainly when you are in the state of Florida and you are surrounded by all that talent, theoretically, it seems easier to reclaim than, okay, how did Nebraska build those programs? How did Penn State build those programs? And in this world, are you going to get kids to Lincoln and to State College? But certainly Penn State and Nebraska aren't giving up on that. And so I think they would be comfortable with being compared to schools like this to say, you want to compare Penn State, Nebraska to Florida schools or California schools? Do it. We think we're as good as them.
For sure.
We don't think there's anything holding us back. And I do think there's enough of, isn't there enough at Nebraska that I don't think the past is meaningless. It's not as meaningful as it once was. You can't recruit kids today with Tom Osborne stories.
Right.
But you can point to national championship trophies. That's real.
Yeah. You can you can point to national championship trophies in a way that I think spur the imagination of guys. Like imagine what this place could be like if we get back to that. Like there's a little bit of like magic in Lincoln. I think that even when they're bad, it's like, I can see it. Like I know what this place would be like if it ever got back to what it used to be.
Right. Would you rather be Nebraska or Florida State right now?
I think I would rather be Nebraska, because then I wouldn't be suing my conference.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. No, that's part of it too. Is it's hard with any conversation with the way the sport is going. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that you almost lean Big Ten and SEC schools no matter what. Because it's like, okay, because at least you're in the conference that feels like it's taking over the sport. All right. That's it for North-South comparisons. I obviously did not get to everybody. There are certainly, I could have done a Northwestern Duke or a Northwestern. I think Northwestern Duke is probably where I would have gone, where, they both have had some versions of recent success on the football field as kind of outliers in some ways in their conferences. Maybe you go Vanderbilt instead for Northwestern, because then it's Big Ten, SEC, and it's like those private schools in the SEC in those two conferences. You could go there. I didn't find a perfect school for Wisconsin. I didn't find a perfect one for Illinois or Minnesota. I was really trying to work something with Iowa State and West Virginia, and I didn't really get there. If you were thinking about this, we have this one bonus category yet that we're going to do. Was there anything that just like had popped into your head that I didn't bring up, that you thought you maybe had an idea for one of our northern schools?
No, I was trying to think of one for like an Iowa State, and like maybe that's an Auburn. I don't know. Like you're just sort of like perennially winning 7-8 games. No, I don't know that there's other obvious ones that jump out. Like I don't think there's like a companion for like a Utah, right? Or a Pitt. I guess Pitt might fall into the Cincinnati, Houston, SMU conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, you could work that. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think we hit the ones that I think have some obvious comparisons. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of one of the schools that we talked about, find a fan at your Southern sister school and be pen pals if you want. And maybe even if it's just pen pals to write each other hateful letters. Your team, your purple team's not as good as my purple team. Your team that lost a coach because of off-field indiscretions isn't as good as my team that lost a coach because of off-field indiscretion. If rivalries are fun. So if we can develop an Ole Miss, Michigan State rivalry based on that, and again, if we can do anything to set up home and homes with these schools, we certainly would be willing to do that. We will create a schedule consulting service and help teams build schedules that matter. Bonus category. There was one northern school that I did really want to try to find a match for, but the match that I found was it is half of one other northern school and half of one other northern school. So it's a northern school that's 50% this northern school and 50% this northern school. And it really is just in terms of style of play and success level, and that's all.
Okay.
But do you want to guess? That's not a lot of clues.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the team. The team that I wanted, and it is Utah. I really wanted to find a match for Utah. But whenever I thought about Utah, I couldn't get away from like, oh, well, this is the comparison. Like I couldn't find one in the South. It's in the North.
Yeah.
Utah is half of what two schools?
Michigan.
Yes.
Michigan and Iowa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Utah is half Michigan, half Iowa.
Yeah.
And actually, like, if you look at recent success, Utah and Iowa are pretty close and Michigan's above them. But I just think, like, I do think Utah has a ceiling, probably. Like, Utah has like a beat USC kind of ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Utah has a win its conference kind of ceiling that I don't think Iowa has. But also, it's not Michigan. I mean, you can't have, I don't know that Kyle Whittingham can just point at Michigan and be like 15-0. If they can do it, we can do it. I don't think that's true historically or right now. Half Michigan, half Iowa? A Wolva-eye?
Oh.
A Hawkeen?
Hawkerine.
Wolverine is pretty bad. A Hawkerine? Yeah. Like if something would fly down and then gnaw your ankle off? Yeah. Oh, it's a Hawkerine.
That's terrifying, actually.
Yeah. And I feel like it would live in the mountains of Utah, potentially. Like, oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted Utah to be involved. This is the best I could do.
No, I think this makes sense. Or I think you could also do like maybe a Michigan, Wisconsin kind of thing with them too. Wisconsin and Iowa, I think, are pretty similar. So it's like just like steady Big Ten West program.
Yeah.
With sometimes the ceiling of like, oh, this offense is pretty good this year. Yeah.
I kind of wish Utah was in the Big Ten.
They should be in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They are a Big Ten program.
Yeah, I think that's right. Kyle Whittingham's like a Big Ten dude. So we would love to have Brant Keithy, just like going up against Big Ten.
Is Kyle Whittingham also like a face mash of Kirk Ferentz and Jim Harbaugh?
Mike, can we get that real quick? Can we face mash real quick? Yeah, we'll work on that. That's the next level technology is face mashing all the head coaches. But and also, so we've got a face mash Kirk Ferentz, Jim Harbaugh. Is that Kyle Whittingham? And then we're putting a mullet on Kirk Ferentz. So that's cool. We have lots of stuff to work on. Okay, we appreciate you guys indulging us on this exercise. We do have some comparisons now for some of our northern teams. I don't know that we'll have a conversation every week of like, hey, how's Syracuse doing compared to South Carolina? Ooh, Syracuse is 3-1. South Carolina is 2-2. Take that. But maybe we will.
Yeah.
Who knows? So if your program found a sister school, let's have a cultural exchange. If there wasn't a pairing that we should have done and you have an idea about it, KOTNCFB on Twitter. We're certainly open for all your comments, or drop something here in the bottom on YouTube and we'll take a look at it. So thanks as always to our producer, Mike Yorostowski, for making us look good and sound good. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.